2.2 Adding modules to the package. We're going to look at choosing file names for our modules, as well as the difference between normal packages and namespace packages, and the difference between a package's structure and its API.
Python modules have the same name as objects that they have as file names, except without the .py suffix. That means the file names of Python modules need to be valid Python variable names, and also that they should use letters and symbols that are reliably available across different operating systems. As an example, module names should not start with a number because Python variables are not allowed to start with numbers, and should not use capital letters because some common operating systems don't differentiate between file names containing capital letters and file names containing all lowercase. As long as we stay within those guidelines, remember to use a .py suffix, we can name our modules anything we please. So we just pick a file name and start writing Python code into a file with that name in the package folder. That simple scenario is also the common case, but there's another possibility. As we've mentioned before, starting in Python 3.3, it's possible to have a package folder that doesn't an init.py file. Leaving out the init.py means we can't support import star, or other tricks with init.py that we'll discover as we go along. There's more to it than that. When init.py is missing, the folder becomes a namespace package. When Python is importing, it combines all of the namespace package folders it finds that share the same name into a single logical package. That behavior then means that, while choosing the module file name still follows the same rules, we could potentially place that file into one of any number of namespace package folders instead of into a singular concrete package folder. What do we gain from that? Often nothing. As I mentioned before, packages with an init load faster, and in many cases the extra abstraction of namespace packages doesn't buy us anything. There are cases, however, when we want different parts of the same package to be distributed or managed separately, and when we do, namespace packages address that need. For example, imagine again that we are working on a package for playing soundtracks. If we make a namespace package for audio codecs, each codec can be installed and removed individually using pip or the operating system's normal tools. On a slightly different topic, now let's talk about the difference between how a package is structured and the interface it should present for use by external code. For the convenience and sanity of ourselves as package developers, it's often best to break up code in a package into many different modules, each containing a selection of conceptually related code. That is the package's structure, and as a rule of thumb, whenever we think we might want to break up the code into more modules, we probably should go with that impulse. On the other hand, external code calling on our package is best off when it can take advantage of our code with just one or two import statements that bring in a small number of functions or classes. That is the package's interface, and as a rule of thumb, it should be as minimal as possible while preserving full functionality. Fortunately, we can have our cake and eat it too. We can divide our code up however we wish, and then import the most useful elements into init.py, which will then make them part of the package's root namespace. If all that's init.py is import statements, we don't need an all variable. An import star will grab the contents of the init.py file, except for variables starting with an underscore. However, if we define or import anything into init.py that should not be part of the public interface, we can use the all variable to narrow down and control what we export. Just remember, if we have an all list, it needs to list everything that is part of the package's interface, whether a module, class, function, or variable. The rest of the modules in the package are still available to be imported explicitly. We're just making it convenient to access the parts that are most likely to be useful outside of our own package. Now that we have a good idea of how to name our modules, where to put them, and they become part of our package, and how to give our package a convenient interface.
So file names should be valid Python variable names and lowercase. Code should be broken up into as many modules as it takes to keep it organized properly, but the parts of the code that are most useful for a code outside the package can be imported into the init.py file and added to a all if we're using it to make them part of the API. Since Python 3.3, folders that don't contain a init.py file are namespace packages, which have slightly different properties from normal packages, but have their uses.
We'll move on to looking at how to make the modules in a package interact.